Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today we're going to talk for a bit about the Detroit Pistons. It's been a pretty grueling rebuild for them over the last 4 years or so, but in my opinion, they might be starting to reach the light at the end of the tunnel. I thought that might be the case this past season going into things where they would somewhat come out of the Eastern Conference gutter behind the play of Cade Cunningham, who felt like he could take a second-year leap, the addition of a guy like Bojan Bogdanovic as a veteran that could score pretty well, and help space the floor for Cade as well as the other young guys on the roster, like Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey, who they picked up in the same draft class. Just a ridiculous haul of rookie talent, and I was really high on both those prospects, both going into the draft as well as going into their rookie seasons. There was some play of other guys that I thought could step up, like Isaiah Stewart, Isaiah Livers, amongst others. I was excited for the Pistons this past season, and again, thought they could take a step forward, maybe not make the play-in tournament, but not be like the worst team in the NBA. Instead, they were exactly that. They were the worst team in the NBA this past season, winning just 17 games, and a big part of that was the fact that Cade Cunningham played just 12 games of his sophomore season before suffering a shin injury that required season-ending surgery and kept him out for the rest of the year. So not only did the Pistons just win 17 games, but also their franchise cornerstone missed the entirety of the year. They did get fun moments from like Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey amongst others, but all in all, it was a pretty rough year for Pistons fans, and trying to watch Pistons basketball, it wasn't the most enjoyable. But if there's any year to suck, it was this past year, because Victor Wembanyama was there in the draft class, one of the best prospects of all time. And just imagining a duo of Cade Cunningham and Victor Wembanyama, not to mention the other young guys on that roster, that team felt like it could immediately be maybe the best young core in the league. But rather than getting the number one overall pick like they probably should have with the worst record in the association, they instead fell to the 5 spot, which is the furthest a team that has the best odds can possibly fall with this lottery format. So they got screwed by the lottery. Their number one overall pick, franchise guy, missed basically the entire season. They won just 17 games. It's been a rough past 365 days roughly for the Pistons as a franchise. But despite that, going into this upcoming year, I feel like again there might be a light at the end of the tunnel for the Pistons. I like the talent that they've got on this roster, the way that they reshaped things in the offseason, the coaching change that they made, bringing in Monty Williams. I'm still high on Cade Cunningham. I really like what Detroit is building over there in Motown. And I wanted to go ahead and make this video talking about why I'm so excited for them, why I think this could be a big season. And even if they don't make the play-in or the playoffs this year, in the next few years, the Pistons are going to be really scary. Now, of course, when we talk Detroit basketball, we have to start with Cade Cunningham. They took him in 2021 at the number one overall spot to be their franchise cornerstone, and I still think he has the potential and will eventually get to that level. As a rookie, he was pretty solid, 17.4 points per game, 5.5 boards, and 5.6 dimes is pretty good, and that was while struggling mightily from the three-point line and just kind of overall to start the season. By the halfway point and even later on, Cade really turned it around and was stellar to wrap up the year, and eventually made the Rookie of the Year race a three-man competition between him, Evan Mobley, and Scotty Barnes. He ends up coming in third, but showcased a lot of the reasons why he was the number one overall pick in such a stacked draft class. In his second season, again, just 12 games, so smaller sample size, but he put up 20 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists, which is crazy for a sophomore guard. Again, we don't know how that would have looked after a full season, but in those 12 games, I was really impressed with a lot of things I saw from Cade Cunningham. The efficiency was rough, but that is typical of young guards. We really don't see players turn their efficiency around at the guard spot for a couple of years, especially when you're on a team like the Pistons, which just really hasn't had that much talent over Cade's first 2 years. I personally am still really high on Cade. I know some people are a bit down on him because of some of the issues that he showcased in his first 2 seasons, and also that long-term injury that he suffered, but I personally believe that when Cade gets more talent around him, not only is the efficiency going to come up, but he's going to get better himself while continuously elevating the talent around him. That just feels like the type of player that Cade Cunningham is to me. And he showcased a lot of the reasons why I'm high on him throughout the USA FIBA camp. If you didn't know, right now Team USA is getting ready to play in the Basketball World Cup coming up this summer, and alongside the official Team USA roster, there's a select team, which is typically made up of younger players, and Cade Cunningham is on that select team, and they just scrimmage alongside Team USA, practice with them to kind of help them get better, and just give them a chance to actually play as a team. And in those scrimmages, Cade Cunningham has been dominating, according to basically all reports, and you can also go look at some of the footage. It's all online. I forget exactly where it is, but from everything that I've seen from those clips, Cade's looked really good. He's stronger. He's been carving up the defense, which is led by a lot of high-level guys. Like they threw Mikal Bridges Bridges at him, for example. He blew past Jaren Jackson Jr. Cade Cunningham has been balling. He's looked fantastic. You can see how his skill set thrives in a talented system when he has players around him that can knock down shots, that he can hit on cuts, hit on lobs. Cade looks really, really good. It opens the game up a lot for him and allows him to dominate and utilize that incredible play style that I think he's got in the tank. It's a snapshot of what he and the Pistons can be in a few years as the talent develops and they grow chemistry together. That, in addition to the fact that hopefully he's healthy now, makes me think that he's going to have his best season by far. The Pistons also have done a decent job of putting more talent around him for the upcoming season. He's got some shooters now, like Joe Harris is over there on the roster. Monte Morris is there now on the team. Of course, they've got Bojan Bogdanovic. Isaiah Livers can knock down shots. It's not a world-beating team full of sharpshooters, but guys can at least hit threes now. Jaden Ivey also showed the potential to hit some catch-and-shoot threes, shooting around 35% from deep on those looks, which isn't phenomenal, but it's serviceable and at least gives Cade some more spacing than he had in the first season in 12 games of his career. The presence of Ivey also gives Cade another ball handler that can take some of that pressure off of him and allow him to work as an off-ball player at times. He's got a really solid big now in Jalen Duren, who was great as a rookie, one of the youngest players in the league, was putting up double-doubles, showed a ton of defensive potential. He's an amazing athlete. I've talked at length on this channel about why I like Jalen Duren's game so much. I think him and Cade are going to excel together as a duo. Jalen Duren actually is also on that Team USA select team, and in the first scrimmage that they played where Cade Cunningham particularly dominated, looked really efficient, him and Jalen Duren had an amazing two-man game going, whether it was a pick and roll, it was him slipping a screen, just diving to the basket in general for lobs. Him and Duren looked really good playing off of each other, and I think we're going to see a lot of this in this upcoming season. They have the potential to be one of the most fun guard big duos in the entire league from day one. I think they're really going to elevate each other's games. Cade being a playmaker that can set Jalen Duren up, Duren being a big that can be that lob threat for Cade, be someone that can dive to the basket. He can hit off pick and roll opportunities, which just makes Cade's game even more dangerous. Duren is an incredible athlete that can run with Cade in transition. I just love the idea of this tandem working together. I think the chemistry is going to be there from day one, and as the season goes on, it's only going to get better as they elevate each other to another level. So I think Cade and Duren are going to be really good, and that's without really even mentioning Jaden Ivey in detail. As a rookie, he was really fun. He dropped 16.3 points per game, 3.9 boards, and 5.2 dimes, while shooting 34.3% from deep, which isn't great, but that's certainly manageable, and I expect the number to climb a lot with Cade now in the fold, who can make things a lot easier, get him some wide open looks, and overall just having better shooters on the roster to space the floor out more for Ivey. He's not going to operate with the ball in his hands nearly as much as he had to this past season with Cade in the equation. And the two of them have the potential to be such a fun backcourt. It's like a thunder and lightning dynamic with the two of them, where Cade is this bigger guard who operates a bit more under his own pace, while Jaden Ivey is this blur that's going to attack the basket, try and dunk on you. He's one of the fastest players in the league, but both of them can play make. It's going to be really fun. I don't know if it's going to be a great backcourt in terms of chemistry from day one, but the talent is there, and I really think they have skill sets to make this thing work pretty well down the line. Plus, it again helps that they added some shooters between Joe Harris, Bojan Bogdanovic, Monte Morris, Isaiah Livers. Alec Burks is a 40% three-point shooter. I think having that floor spacing around those two guys, as well as a big like Jalen Duren and some other bigs with Isaiah Stewart, James Wiseman, Marvin Bagley that we'll talk about later, I think having this talent around them, which is only going to get better over time, will make that transition easier and allow them to really operate in their own ways. The combined playmaking of Cade and Ivey is going to make their teammates' lives so much easier. I think they're both players that can elevate the talent around them. Again, it might be kind of rough at the beginning, but as you give them more time to gel and they build that chemistry, not only are they going to be one of the best young backcourts in the league, but in a few seasons, I think they could be in that conversation for the single best backcourt in the league, period. Then we get to the grouping of bigs. I've mentioned Jalen Duren a lot, so I won't talk about him much, but again, I'm really high on him. The defensive potential, the athleticism, what he showed as one of the youngest players in the league this past season, with Ivey and Cade both now being guards for him and some improved shooting. I think Duren is in for a monster campaign, and eventually, I think he'll be an all-star caliber big. They've also got Isaiah Stewart there, who they gave an extension and could be the four of the future, but he's got to figure out the three-point shot. It's got to be more consistent. There are some nights where he's knocking it down, and he did shoot 32.6% the past two seasons, which is a decent enough mark, but it's got to get better if they want him to be the consistent four in a lineup with Cade, Ivey, Ausar Thompson, and Jalen Duren. We'll see if that happens, but at the very worst, Stewart is a really fun hustle guy and could be a great backup front court option off the bench. They've also got Marvin Bagley, who's been solid in his time in Detroit. Now the three-point shooting shooting, which is kind of a theme with their bigs, was rough. He shot just 29% from the outside this past season. They need him to figure it out, but again, even if he doesn't become the starting forward of the future, I still think Marvin Bagley, as a young talent, is a fun guy to have over there, and if he continues to develop, you could get a really solid role player out of it. Then you've got James Wiseman, who came in at the deadline. He was fine, and I still think he's got a lot of potential in the tank. But again, he can't really shoot. They tried some double big lineups with him and Jalen Duren out there, and I personally really don't want to see that too much. I think it just absolutely kills the spacing, which is critical for Cade and Jaden Ivey to play their best games. I think Wiseman could be a really good backup 5 down the line, but at this point, I'm higher on Jalen Duren. But like I mentioned with Isaiah Stewart and Marvin Bagley, even if Wiseman doesn't reach his full potential, he's a really solid option as a backup 5, and why not keep a former number 2 overall pick on the roster if he eventually somehow finds a lot of that potential that made him the number 2 overall pick. They got a steal trading for him at the deadline. Then we have Ausar Thompson, who the Pistons picked up at the 5 spot, where again, they got screwed by the lottery. But all in all, I think he's a great pickup and slots in perfectly at the 3 spot for this team. In Summer League, it was somewhat frustrating in the first couple of games because he wasn't consistently involved in the offense or really just ever getting the ball, but eventually they involved him more, and by the end of Summer League, he was one of the biggest standouts to me. Statistically, he put up 13.6 points per game, 10 boards, 3.7 dimes with 2.2 steals and 2 blocks per game. That's a ridiculous stat line. The 3-point shot was rough and is somewhat expected as a concern, which is kind of, again, a theme over the course of this Pistons roster. They need guys to figure out their shots, but I think Ausar's has the potential to come along at least decently, and even without the 3-point shot falling, he looked phenomenal as an offensive connector. He finished plays using his ridiculous athleticism. He's so fast and is going to thrive in transition. Just imagine Jaden Ivey and Ausar Thompson running together in a fast break. It might be the fastest duo in the league. I don't know how you stop those 2 guys in the open court. He also showed to be a decent playmaker, and above all, the defense was incredible. Clearly from his 2 steals and 2 blocks per game, that's obvious, but his lateral quickness popped. His ability to contest shots and close out on them using his absurd athleticism is incredibly impressive. His ability to get it for blocks using his absurd vertical. He's got great hands, consistently poking the ball away and stealing lazy passes, as well as just ripping it from stronger players. On and off ball, he was making a consistent big impact, and if the shot comes along, he's the perfect wing for this roster. Between Ausar, Cade, Ivey, and Duren, this young core in Detroit is loaded with really intriguing talent with unbelievable upside. I'm excited with what they've got going on over there. Even if it takes a few years to develop, this core can be really special one day. Additionally, I like the decision to bring Monty Williams in as the franchise's next head coach. They needed to make a change at the head coaching spot. Dwayne Casey was just not working out, and he had been here for a while, and I was never particularly impressed with what he did in Detroit. Monty Williams, meanwhile, helped bring a winning culture over there to Phoenix after years of them struggling, and now he comes to a similar situation over here with the Pistons. He's got a young core that he can work with, help develop. I expect him to get a lot of buy-in from these guys, and ultimately, I still think Monty Williams is just a pretty good coach overall. So yeah, there's just a lot to be excited about with this Pistons team. One player I do want to make a note of before we wrap up is Killian Hayes. I know he was drafted in the top 10 a few years ago, but at this point, it feels like Killian probably won't be a Detroit Piston for very long. He's shown some flashes, but he hasn't put them together nearly consistently enough to be considered a staple of this core anymore. Plus, they've got Cade, Ivey, they have Marcus Sasser, who they just drafted, Monte Morris they traded for, Alec Burks can play some guard. Like, there's a lot of guards on this roster. I just don't see how Killian Hayes gets any significant playing time over the course of this season anywhere consistently. I wouldn't be surprised if he's moved prior to the year or at some point during the season, because it feels like if he's ever going to reach his true potential, it's going to have to be somewhere else, because I just don't think he's in the long-term plans of the Pistons anymore. So yeah, those are my thoughts for the Detroit Pistons this upcoming season. Like I said earlier, I don't know if they're going to be a play-in team, but at the very least, it's going to be really fun to watch this young core this upcoming season. I'll definitely be tuning into a good number of Pistons games to watch Cade play. I think he's going to have a really good season, see how he and Ivey work together, see the two-man game between Cade and Jalen Duren, as well as Jaden Ivey, see how Ausar Thompson fits into everything as a ridiculous athlete. It's going to be way more fun to watch Pistons ball this year than it was last year, and give them a couple years and they'll be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference in my opinion, especially if, again, they're not great this season record-wise and end up getting one of the top picks in this draft class. With all that being said, I appreciate y'all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Also, comment down below, what player on the Pistons are you most excited to see play this season? season? And where do you think they can land in the standings? Do you think they could go ahead and make a play-in push? Do you think they're right there on the edge, kind of like I do? And ultimately, what do you think is the outcome for this Pistons core in a few years? Will Cade be an all-star? Will Duren be one? Will Ivey? Will Ausar Thompson? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this young Pistons team. It's always fun to project where these young rebuilding teams will go next. And I think the Pistons have a really bright future ahead of them. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.